I got the reason yesterday for getting the scratch, and so that's where I went in at 9 this morning. So all is in divine order is the whole point of the story here. Everything does work out, and that's certainly a very central point of unity. So unity really works.
It works.
With that in mind, let us go through our vision statement together. A world powerfully transformed through shared spiritual awakening. Our mission, advancing the movement of spiritual awakening and transformation through unity, a positive path for spiritual living. And our values, abundance, acceptance, community, diversity, integrity, joy, and love. And we celebrate our children. Together, Unity of Appleton sees the divinity in all children and nurtures their unfolding spirituality. And now, from the Unity magazine, or the Daily Word, which if you don't get it, it's really worth it. I recommend it highly. And the word today is radiance. The Christ presence within is my radiant source of good. On a clear day, when a stray cloud passes across the sun, I notice a suddenly diminished light. Then, look, I see brilliant rays of sunshine surrounding the cloud. Instead of hiding the sun, the cloud helps me see and appreciate the sun's radiance. As the sun lights the earth and is the source of its energy, the Christ, the divine presence within me, is my light and the source of everything that I need in order to live brilliantly and joyfully. When, like a passing cloud, an obstacle or challenge along my path may seem to dim my Christ light, I respond by looking up, by raising my point of view. I am reassured and strengthened, knowing that the divine radiance is shining as brightly as ever. No cloud can dim the divine light in me. And from the Gospel of John, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it.
Thank you, Bedford. Hi again. Okay, we're on. Yay. And I'll stay over here because I have the camera on in a strange place. It's nice to see you. There's some new faces today. I was explaining to them that this is our soft opening, and we'll have music and all the children's program back in the fall, but right now it's a little low key. We're a little chill. This is the chill Unity of Appleton that you're seeing now. Okay, so let's take a moment just to get centered before we get started. So if you want to close your eyes with me or just relax your gaze, and we'll just take some breaths. As we allow the fullness of who we are in this moment. And just breathe. In through our nose. And out. We are pausing. Taking a moment to just be here. Right now is where all of our power is. Where all of our hope and joy are. The past is gone. The future is not here. Now, you are free of both. In this moment, I pause to recognize that there is a light within me that is guiding me in this and every moment. And I come here today to be pointed toward my own wisdom, my own knowing. Recognizing that my heart and mind in this moment are open. I am open, hearing from my Christ nature. I am here to be truly helpful to myself and in so doing, be of service to all others in the world. I am a gift. My presence is a gift. And I give it to myself now. One more breath together. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes and join me back in this moment. Slowly, slowly. Thank you, Tom. I'm so glad to have the guitar. Grateful. So today I wanted to talk to you again. I once talked about her. Her name is Edith Eger. Does anybody know who she is? She is the Holocaust survivor who at age 50 went back and got her doctorate and wrote her first book at 97 called The Choice. And she wrote about her experiences in Auschwitz. She was kept in Auschwitz with her sister, and her mother and father were killed as soon as they got there. She was 16 years old, and she was asked to she was a dancer, and she was asked to dance for Dr. Mengele, is his name, and he's pretty infamous. She is amazing. So now she is a therapist, a psychologist and a therapist, and she talks to trauma victims, she talks to veterans, and she speaks with such authority because she literally, was very, very close to death by the time that they found her. And I'm not going to go into the details of her story, but it is quite something. And in her first book called The Choice, she goes through it all. And in this book called The Gift, it is it's mixed with some of her experiences, but it's a lot about, it's 12 lessons to save your life. And she talks about the people that she helps and treats along with her experience. And I ordered this and I was so excited because I got to literally close my door yesterday and just read it from back to front. So thank you all, because you are the ones that allow me to do that. So I'm going to start by reading from her words. And then we'll talk Mary Ann. Okay. So conflict, and in the daily word, the word was radiance. And it talked about the moment where the sun is covered by clouds, but you know that the sun is still present and there. So I want you to have that in your awareness. And that's kind of where I got my inspiration for today. Conflict is human. When we avoid conflict, we're actually moving closer to tyranny than to peace. Conflict isn't imprisoning. Conflict itself isn't imprisoning. What keeps us trapped is the rigid thinking we often use to manage conflict. The prison bars of rigid thinking can be hard to recognize because they're often gilded in good intentions. Many people seek me out for therapy because they want to improve their relationships, to find a better way to communicate with their partners or children, to have more peace and intimacy. But often I discover that they're not in therapy to learn how to negotiate conflict. They want my help in convincing others to conform to their point of view. If you come in with an agenda, if you're keeping score or trying to change someone else, then you're not free. And the way that I always put this is, as long as anybody or anything has to be different than what they are, I'm not free. And that's just the way it is. So freedom is when you embrace your power to choose your own response. My patients say it all the time. I want him to, or I want her to, but you can't want something for another person. You can only discover what's right for you. This is one of the most important tools for managing conflict. Stop denying someone else's truth. I love a good tongue sandwich. Does anybody know what tongue is? Okay, because when I read that, I was like, I'm misreading this. I read it like 4 times. Okay, I'm good. We'll talk about what tongue is later. Okay. I love a good tongue sandwich, but my friend says, how can you eat that? I get sick just thinking about it. So who's right? He's right for him to give up, blah, blah, blah. He's right for him and I'm right for me. You don't have to agree. You don't have to give up your truth. And please don't ever do that. Freedom comes in letting go of the be right. Which is easy in this moment because I'm kind of right about everything right now because no one else is talking to me. So I can assume that we all agree on what I think is right. And then you're, with your husband or wife or whatever. Okay, so when I realized decade after the war that in order to heal, I had to go back to Auschwitz and face the past, I invited my sister Magda to come with me. We had kept each other alive when we were prisoners. We had each been each other's reasons to live. I wanted to go back with her to the place where our parents were killed, to face what happened, to grieve, to be at the site of constant terror and say, we made it. But she thought I was an idiot. Who would willingly return there? My sister, the only person on the planet who shared so much with me, the person to whom I credit my very survival, had a completely different response to our common experience. And neither one of us is wrong or right, better or worse, healthier or unhealthier. I'm right for Edie. Magda's right for Magda. We are both human, beautiful and fallible, no more, no less. And we're both right. I went back to Auschwitz alone. This is what I think Jesus meant when he advised us to turn the other cheek. When you turn the other cheek, you look at the same thing from a new perspective. You can't change the situation. You can't change someone else's mind, but you can look at reality differently. I'm excited because I also have a copy. I don't know if I'm going to read it now. I couldn't decide, but now I'm getting excited, so I'm going to read it. Okay, this is a copy of A Return to Love that's very used and well loved. I have my signed copy and another copy, but this one I love so much because it has my highlights in it from the first time I read it 15 years ago. Okay, so old Newtonian physics. Okay, what did I say? Maybe for those of you who don't know me, I should slow down. This is A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson, and she's talking about A Course in Miracles. Old Newtonian physics claimed that things have an objective reality separate from our perception of them. Quantum physics, and particularly Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, reveal that as our perception of an object changes, the object itself literally changes. The science of religion is actually the science of consciousness because ultimately all creation is expressed through the mind. Thus, A Course in Miracles says, our greatest tool for changing the world is our capacity to change our mind about the world. Okay, so go back to this. So remember what she said? She said, this is what I think Jesus meant when he advised us to turn the other cheek. When you turn the other cheek, you look at the same thing from a new perspective. You can't change the situation. You can't change someone else's mind, but you can look at reality differently. You can accept and integrate multiple points of view. This flexibility is your strength. And not only is it your strength, I'm going to pause from Dr. Eager and say, not only is it your strength, it's where the miracles come in. Because the new perspective, so there was a situation going on over the weekend, and I was definitely in victim consciousness. I was saying things in my mind like, why me? This isn't fair, that kind of thing. And I recognized that what I needed was a miracle. And when I say a miracle, I have come to understand that a miracle doesn't mean that I am trying to change what is happening on the outside. It means that I know what's happening on the outside is perfect and on purpose, and my mind is somewhere else not getting the lesson. I am not getting the beauty that is my current experience. So when I ask for a miracle, and it's not an unreasonable thing to ask for, and it is your very birthright to do so, my very birthright to do so, when we ask for a miracle, we're not asking for a God or a deity or a being outside of us to come in and intercede on our behalf, the lowly sinner that we are. What we are doing is tapping into the energy and the power that we are born from, that is our source, that we cannot be separate from. We're tapping into that energy and looking at things, right, through the lens of that energy. New perspective, shift in perspective. So I'm not looking with the personality of Lydia's eyes anymore. I'm looking through my Christ consciousness eyes. And my Christ consciousness is the place where God and I meet. And don't get stuck on the word God, because it doesn't matter what you call it. Okay, so, all right, so where were we? So this flexibility is our strength. It's what allows us to be assertive, not aggressive or passive aggressive, not aggressive or passive aggressive. When we're aggressive, we decide for others. When we're passive, we let others decide for us. And when we're passive aggressive, we prevent others from deciding for themselves. We prevent others from deciding for themselves. When you're assertive, you speak in statements. When I wanted to go back to school, I was afraid of Bela's opinion, afraid he would resent my time away from the family, afraid he wouldn't like us being introduced as Dr. and Mr. Eager. But when you're a whole person, an adult, you don't have to ask anyone else's permission. So don't put your life in someone else's hands. Just make a statement. I've decided to go back to school and get my doctorate. Give the other person the information and freedom they need to be assertive about their wants and hopes and fears. The key to maintaining your freedom during a conflict is to hold your truth while also relinquishing the need for power and control. Because most of the time when I tell you my plans, especially in a spousal relationship like the one she's talking about here, I'm telling you my plans because I want you to agree with them. And I want you to think that, yes, of course that's right. But she's saying that the motivation needs to be different. When I tell you my plans, it needs to be because this is a decision that I've made and feels right for me. And for her, she didn't feel like she needed to talk to Mr. Eager. She felt like it was a decision for her to make. And so she knew that she was to be assertive and talk to this person, but also to allow for that person to also be assertive and speak their truth about their fears and hopes and wants about it. And so she's giving the psychologist's perspective, but throughout this book, you guys, so at the end of each chapter, she gives a practice, right? So I'm going to go over this with you too, because I really do like this book. I think it's kind of, I don't want to say easy, but it's a reminder. A lot of this stuff you're going to be like, yes, but it's a really good reminder. And it's very practical. And it's said in a very practical way. So what she does, so chapter 1 is what now? Victimhood. So at the end, she gives practices for getting out of that victim mentality. Chapter 2, no Prozac at Auschwitz. And that one's about avoidance. And she gives, tools for that. All other relationships will end. That's called self-neglect. One butt, two chairs. That's about secrets. It's about not being the same person in every arena. Being one person when you're at work, being another person when you're here, being one person at home, another person here. So she calls it one butt, two chairs. No one rejects you but you, and that's on guilt and shame. And then nothing to prove, which is rigidity. And I'm reading from that chapter on rigidity. And would you like to be married to you? And that's resentment. It's a good one. I highlighted a whole bunch. Are you evolving or revolving? And that's paralyzing fear. And she gives tools for fear. The Nazi in you, and that's on judgment. If I survive today, tomorrow I will be free. That's on hopelessness. And there's no forgiveness without rage, not forgiving. And that is 177. And I have to say that one is really powerful because I've been looking at things that things have come into my awareness that I'm to look at. And I have thought, but why am I to look at those things? I've already put those things away and I've already moved on from those things and forgiven everybody. And it feels fine to me. And apparently there is a younger version of myself that disagrees with me, who lives in my thoughts. And so she's shown up to show me what I missed. Okay, so anyway, and I'm going to share with you some of the practices she gives on rigidity in just a second. But I really do think this is a great book because you can read it. I read this book backwards to front. And I don't know why I did it, but it was what I was inspired to do. And you know that I follow my inspirations. I don't ask questions till the end. Okay. So it helps when we can meet others as they are, not as we expect them to be. I have a patient who is often in conflict with his teenage daughter. One session, he was upset because when they'd escalated into a fight about whether or not she could use the car, his daughter blew up at him, calling him names and using profanity. He wanted me to be the judge, to hear the evidence and pronounce his daughter guilty, to take his side. But we don't empower others or ourselves when we launch into complaints, when we say, here's what you did this, here's what you did that. No one grows with criticism. Really? Wow, I had to rethink my whole worldview there. No one grows with criticism. So eliminate it. No criticism. None, ever. And I feel like people like this, they speak with such authority. Like if she can forgive, if she can, and it's funny, someone in her life said, you should go get your doctorate. And this is when she was in her 40s. And she said, by the time I get my PhD, I'll be 50. And he said, you're going to be 50 anyway. And don't you love that? I'm going to be 50 anyway. So she did and published her first book at 97. I mean, she's just like to have that kind of perspective to say that there's no such thing as a victim when you have every evidence to the contrary, where this is the person, if there's somebody that can make a case for the fact that, yes, it is possible to be a victim, this woman is it. And that's why when she speaks, there's such authority in it. And you're like, okay, I guess that means it's true. Forgive others, don't criticize. I guess we have to believe you. We do this for others, but most of all for ourselves, the part about not eliminating criticism. So we can live free of unrealistic expectations and free of the anger that comes when our expectations are not met. I'm very selective about who's going to get my anger because when I'm angry, I'm the one who suffers. That is so true. Have you had that experience? Have you been in the middle of your anger and realized how unhappy you are and thought, I just want this to go away no matter what the cost because I just want to be happy? And how do I let this go? It's so true. So she's very selective about who gets her anger. So next time I'm angry at someone, I'm going to say, you should feel privileged because I'm giving you my anger. Okay, so unhealthy conflict has everything to do with being locked in a better than, less than mindset. When Bela and I were traveling in Europe one summer, we discovered that, and I'm not going to get this right, so Bolshoi, is that right? Bolshoi, does anybody know? Bolshoi Ballet Tour was scheduled to come through Paris while we were there. I'd always dreamed of seeing them perform. Remember, she's a former dancer. Bela bought me a ticket and dropped me off at the theater, but wouldn't go inside. I thought it was about the money, but that he didn't want to spend more on a second ticket. I came out at intermission entranced by the performance and encouraged him to come in for the second half. There are open seats, I said. Get a ticket and come enjoy this with me. But he wouldn't go in. I don't give money to Russians, he said. Not after what the communists did to me in Czechoslovakia. He's a survivor too. He'd convinced himself that this was how he could avenge the cruelties and imprisonment he'd suffered. I argued with him, urged him to reconsider, told him these artists have nothing to do with what happened to you. But of course, I couldn't change his mind. I went back into the theater and enjoyed the rest of the performance. For me. On one hand, it's too bad he couldn't set aside his judgment and anger and sit with me in the dark, enjoying something breathtakingly beautiful. On the other hand, I can't say my way was better than his way. Bela's way was better for Bela. My way was better for me. Many of us live as though we have something to prove. We can become addicted to having the last word. I identified with that when I heard it. I've let that go. Shh. You get it? All right. But I'm cracking myself up. But if you're trying to prove that you're right or you're good or you're trying to make yourself into something that doesn't exist, every human is fallible. Every human makes mistakes. You're not helpless. You're not a saint either. You're not hopeless and you're not a saint either. You don't have to prove your worth. You can just embrace it. Celebrate that you're imperfect and whole, that there will never be another you. Drop the agenda. If you have something to prove, you're still a prisoner. This is even true in the face of someone else's unkindness or persecution. My friend's daughter came home from kindergarten very upset because her classmate had called her a poopy face. My friend asked me how she could help her daughter deal with the conflict. It's important that we give up the need to defend ourselves. We're all probably going to face bullies. But if someone calls you a poopy face, don't say, I'm not a poopy face. Don't defend yourself against a crime you never committed. Don't defend yourself against a crime you never committed. It just becomes a power struggle. The bully throws you a rope, you pick up the other end, and you're both tugging and exhausted. It takes two to fight, but it takes one to stop. And Byron Katie says, defense is the first act of war. I'm convinced that they know each other because there's so much in common. So don't pick up the rope. Tell yourself, the more he talks, the more relaxed I become. The more he talks, the more relaxed I become. And remind yourself that it's not personal. When someone calls you poopy face, he's really talking about how he sees himself. I lectured once in Johannesburg. Is it Johannesburg or Johannesburg? Nobody knows. Good. I could have just gone along. This is where my husband says, stop doing that. Just read. A home where Gandhi once lived, now a museum and a retreat center. He was able to bring the British Empire to its knees without any bloodshed, without the rhetoric of hate. This is one of the ways I was able to survive Auschwitz. I was surrounded every moment by dehumanizing words. You're worthless, you're dirty, the only way you'll leave this place is as a corpse. But I didn't let those words penetrate my spirit. Somehow I was blessed with the insight that the Nazis were more imprisoned than I was. I first understood this night I danced for Mengele. My physical body was trapped in a death camp, but my spirit was free. Mengele and the others would always have to reckon with what they'd done. I was numb with shock and hunger. I was terrified, but I still had an inner sanctuary. The Nazis' power came from systematic dehumanization and extermination. My strength and freedom were within. So I want us to talk now. I want to hear from all of us. We're going to have our group discussion now. Bye, everybody. We're going to have our talk. So you should come here. It's so fun. Love you guys. Bye-bye. Okay, so, and John is not here to do the mic, so we're just going to talk